Great. Thanks, everybody, for being here this evening. Got a good-looking group out there. Don't you think? Or at least some, I guess, evidently. Not too many. So my name is Chris Russell. I have the privilege of being the lead pastor here at Community Church of Waterford. I know we've got a number of new faces out there this evening. We're so grateful that you've chosen to take time out of your evening to join with us this evening as we learn more about this incredibly important ministry. I do want to just, as a reminder, in case we have like really young kids in, just parents be aware, obviously we know this topic is going to be a very sensitive, very upfront conversation tonight. So if for some reason you're not comfortable with your child being in that, we do have classes going on downstairs that they can jump into. So feel free to take advantage of that. So I know you're not here to hear me. We're here to hear Tony. But before Tony comes up, I want to introduce a friend of mine that I've gotten to has become a dear person to me in these last few months. Would you guys welcome the CEO of Destiny Rescue, Kirk Faulkner. For those of you who don't know, our partnership with kids with Destiny Rescue goes back about a year and a half, and in April of last year was when Peter was here and was sharing with us, and our church family really got behind this, just recognized this is a horrible travesty that's going on in the world around us, and we went from anger to action and decided to do something about that. And for those of you maybe didn't get to be here this Sunday, we got to celebrate 3 more rescues that we've been a part of. So we've been a part of 13 rescues with Destiny Rescue in the last year and a half. So we're thrilled about that, and we're excited knowing that that's just the beginning for us. So Kirk, go ahead and share with us a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Well, good evening. It is a pleasure to be here. I genuinely look forward to coming to this place and listening to Reed and the gang. They're good, huh? And it's also my pleasure this evening to introduce Tony Kirwan. He is the founder of Destiny Rescue and currently serving as the international president as well. And we're currently functioning in 9 countries around the world. And for 15 years, he's been on this mission to end the trafficking of children in the sex trade. In fact, we've had the blessing of rescuing over 1,700 kids so far, which is amazing. Yeah. About half of those kids are 16 and under, and we had some 4-year-olds this year, which is just an amazing thing, I think. Tony is joining us from his home base in Thailand, so literally halfway around the world, and he's originally from New Zealand and Australia, so you'll hear that in his accent tonight as well. I was thinking about this Tony Talks thing. We're on a tour here. He's going to speak, I think, 13 times in 12 days. And so, but if you want to get Tony talking, you just simply ask him about rescuing and restoring kids. I'll never forget one of my first conversations with Tony. We were standing in the middle of a rescue property, and there were the homes around us that the girls were living in, and the jewelry production house where the reintegration work goes on, and the learning center where the restoration work is happening and all. And Tony, it was one of the oddest, most surreal, I think is the way to say it, conversations I've ever had in my life, because Tony was describing to me how they do the rescue work and how they look like a creep in these really ugly places, and at the same time they have this ability to convince these young girls that they're different, that for some mysterious reason some of the good guys go to these really ugly places. And I remember leaving that conversation thinking, wow, there's more to this than I imagined, and they're really good at this. And my confidence went through the roof in how we do what we do, and why they can do it in a safe way for the kids and all. And I never forget, I asked him, I said, Tony, all the stuff you've told me, what's the most important thing you do to convince these girls while you're looking like a creep in this place that you're different? And I'll never forget his answer. He said, we look them in the eyes. Tony is one of the most focused people you'll ever meet. And his calling is clear, and his passion is focused like few people you're going to meet. He loves to rescue kids. And let me illustrate it this way. I had asked his wife, Jenny, you probably don't know this, but I said, Jenny, what does he like to eat? What does he like to drink? Because he was going to live with us for a little bit. And And what does he like to do? And I thought, well, if we had some downtime, we'll find something to do. And she says in her text, she says, Tony likes to rescue kids. And she put a big smiley face at the end of it. That's Tony Kirwan. He loves to rescue kids. And for 15 years, he's been asking us to join him and share what we've been given to get in the fight and rescue these kids. So would you join me in welcoming Tony Kirwan?
Awesome. How you going? Going good? Yep. I just want to start with thanking Chris for opening this platform here today. This is a real honour and a real privilege. I really appreciate it, mate. So those of you who aren't real familiar with what Destiny Rescue does is we go into probably some of the darkest places that you can imagine, looking for children that are trapped in the sex trade, and we help restore them, and we present the gospel to them. And today I just want to tell you a few stories about what I've seen when I've gone into these places. And I remember going into what they call a go-go bar in Bangkok, and we'd been there several times before. We had actually rescued 3 or 4 kids from that place. And as we walked in that front door, the mama-san, which is the brothel manager, she came over, she recognised me, and she gave me this big hug. She saw me as a good customer, and she walked me over to a side of the brothel so I could get a good view of the girls dancing on the stage. And as I sat down, just as a way to try and stay under the radar, I just leant over to her and I said, you know, what happened? Can that kid who sat with me last time, can she sit with me tonight? And I already knew full well that a little while ago we'd already rescued that kid, and she was up in one of our homes in northern Thailand. And I'd barely got those words out of my mouth, and she just burst into laughter. And she said, you know, you must be one of the most unlucky guys out there, because each time you come here and you find a kid you like, when you come back, she's missing. So I'm not sure if she's a bit simple or God's blinding her eyes. I'm happy with either. And so we just sat there, and I just had a look up on the stage, and there was this kid dancing on a pole, and she looked about 15 years old, and she was dancing like her life depended on it. And I just leaned over to the mama-san, and I pointed to the girl, and I said, yeah, she looks cute, can she come and sit with us? And she got out a laser pen and shone it in her eyes to get her attention, to make her sit down. And, you know, in all of our rescues, we try and stay as low-key as possible. We try and get in and out without the mama-san even realising what our intentions are. We go in there covertly, posing as customers. What we just try and do is identify the kids, gain their trust, and then just offer them an escape. To the brothel owners and the staff, we want to look like every other customer, but to the girls, as soon as they sit down next to us, we want to stand out as totally different. And the way we do that is crazy simple. We're just good guys in a bad place. We have a real strict touch policy, so obviously we never touch them bad. We never allow them to touch us bad. We just very simply treat them like they're our daughters, and we treat them with respect. And by doing that, we build their trust really fast, and usually after a few visits, there's enough trust there that we can offer them an escape. And I remember we went back to this brothel several times, and each time you could see her body language just changing that little bit more, and you could see that she started to trust us. And this kid didn't really have the freedom to leave the brothel, so we went to the mama-san and paid what they refer to as a bar fine. So as far as the mama-san is concerned, the assumption is we're taking her away to abuse her, but all we did was we took her to a McDonald's restaurant about 400 or 500 metres up the road. And when we got there, we just told her, you know, we can disappear. You never have to go back there. We can disappear tonight. And this kid had these wide eyes of like she was just confused. She couldn't process what had just happened. She was expecting to be abused, not be offered an escape. And she said, I can't, I've got to think about it. Can I contact you? And said, yeah, of course. So it really hurts to do it, but we had to leave her there. That was our last night of our operation there in Bangkok, and all of us boys jumped on the bus heading up north to our base up there. And about 6 hours into the drive, I got a phone call from this kid, and she said, "Come and get me, I want out." Would have been great if she called 6 hours earlier, but it's still good to get the call. And we kept on going up to our base, and then we jumped in a plane, flew back, and picked this girl up and brought her up to our base up the north of Thailand. And I remember it was a Friday, 3 days after we'd rescued her, and we had like a youth worship night where the girls were playing games and singing songs and just having fun. There was about 50 rescued girls there, and I remember watching the kid that we'd just rescued, just, having fun, like kids should be having fun. And I remember thinking to myself, just 3 days ago, you were on a catwalk, you were dancing on a pole, and you had to leave and have sex with any creep that had money in his pockets. But now you're free, and you've got a hope, and you can live out what destiny God has for you. I thought that was pretty cool. And that kid ended up doing training and becoming a hairdresser. I was her first haircut, not this one, but yeah, that was really cool. So God is good, little Cassie, she lived about 3 hours out of the city. She was the youngest of seven children, and the whole family were farmers. But even though they were farmers, Cassie's parents still didn't have the capacity to feed her. So they told Cassie that she had to stop going to school and she had to go find a job. And she was a 14-year-old kid, lived in a rural area, had no idea what she could do for work. And she just spoke to one of her friends, and she suggested to her, there's got to be work in the city. So there was a pickup truck that was going past, and she jumped in the back of the pickup truck. And she was dropped off at what they referred to as a bus station, but it's not really a bus station. It's basically a big open field with about 20 or 30 brothels around the edge of it. And as she got out of the pickup truck, her mama-san came over to her and offered her a job. And she said, all you need to do is dress up pretty and sit next to men and sometimes go out with them. Now, Cassie was only 14 years old. She was a virgin, and she told us she didn't know she had to have sex, but she didn't even know what sex was. And she told us on 5 separate occasions she was taken into a room and she was locked in there with 3 or 4 men, and they would violently gang rape her all night. And any time that she would fight back, they would just keep beating her until she submitted. And another thing that happened to Cassie was, while they were doing that, they were videoing it and taking photos. So not only was this kid suffering this physical abuse, but she had this thought in the back of her mind, who else is going to see what's happening to me? Just that added shame. And we actually spoke to a whole bunch of kids in that program, and 80% of them said exactly the same thing, that they also had been gang raped and they also were videotaped. I remember the first time we saw Cassie, we called her over to come and sit with us, and she was, she's obviously very sheepish. She was scared. We sat and talked with her and just treated her like she was our own daughter. And when we left, we smiled, we gave her a tip, and we told her she was special. And we went back there a couple more times, and each time we could see her just relax that little bit more. And we could tell that she started to see us as good guys. And what we did then is we got out our mobile phone and started flicking through photos of children that we'd rescued in the area. And we said to her, if you want, we can disappear tonight. And it was so fast, so simple. She gave us a little smile and a little nod, and this brave little kid stood up, and we literally walked out the front of that brothel. She jumped on the back of our bikes, and we rode to the rescue property. And when we arrived at the rescue property, she was insanely excited. Like, it was weird how excited she was. And we found out later that in the back of her mind, she was actually very scared, thinking that we were tricking her, taking her to a worse place than where she was already at. So when she got there and saw there's a whole bunch of kids and they all had smiles on their faces, she was crazy excited. That was the real deal. So Cassie now has a bunch of whole lot of new friends, and her dream is to open up her own hair and beauty salon, which I think is pretty cool for a 14-year-old. I remember one night I was out on rescue, and we'd just found 3 kids, and we'd just bar fined them to take them away to offer them an escape. And we just arrived at a restaurant, and we were just about to tell these kids why we paid the bar fine to get them away. And I got a phone call from 2 other agents that were out working that night, and they were in quite a panic. They said to me that there's only one girl there in the brothel. They've got her. I think she was about 13 years old, and there's another 2 tables just full of guys, all looking at them really angry, really lustful, and they felt they were going to come over and actually fight them to take the girl off them. So there was four guys on my team, so 2 of the boys stayed with those 3 girls, and myself and one of the other boys, we jumped on our bikes and we headed over to this place. And as soon as we walked in, it was exactly how they said, and you could just see, if you can see the lust in these guys' eyes. These guys wanted to take that kid. And we went over and sat down on the table next to this one girl, and as I sat down, I looked over in the corner of that brothel, and I could see, it looked like there was a staircase going downstairs, which was a little bit weird because it was just a single-story building. So I got up and I walked over to the corner, and yeah, it was a staircase. So I went down the staircase and had a look around, and what they'd done is they'd sort of dug out from underneath that brothel, and they'd laid some poorly laid masonry blocks, probably about 5 or 6 rooms. And in each room, it had just like this dirty mattress on the floor and a door. It didn't even have a lock on the door. The only way you knew someone was in there, there was a pair of shoes out the front. And as I was standing looking at the first room, and there was a bit of a corridor, I could hear some noises, and I knew I wasn't alone. And I walked around the corner, and as I walked around the corner, there was this set of little red shoes sitting out the front of this room, and you could hear noises. You knew what was happening behind that door. And as I was standing there, just that overwhelming feeling of knowing something's happening, and then thinking at the same time, that kid upstairs knows exactly what happens down in this dungeon, in these rooms. If we don't do something to rescue that kid now, this is exactly what's going to happen to her. And it's probably happened to her many, many times, many nights before. So I just went straight up those stairs and paid money to that mama-san, grabbed that kid's hand, and we just walked out that door, jumped on the bike, and we took off. And I know that's not a totally happy story, but for me personally, it's one of those stories that actually motivates me to go out and find that next kid. Every time I see red shoes, I think about that kid that was in behind that door. Just last month, I had a phone call about 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was from a girl that I'd met in Bangkok in one of the brothels that we hadn't rescued out of the brothel yet, and she was in tears and was just begging me to help her. She told me that she had a boyfriend, and he told her that he had found her a good job working at a restaurant in Hong Kong. She was from Thailand. And she trusted him, and he bought her a ticket, and she got on the plane and she flew to Hong Kong. And as she got out of the plane, in some places in Asia, they have like a tourist SIM card for your phone before you get out. And she saw these people handing out these SIM cards, and fortunately she took one. And with them comes a little bit of credit on data and whatever. And as she walked out of the gates, there was a lady there holding a sign with her name on it. And so she went with this lady, and the lady was nice enough. And they drove to where this restaurant was. And as she arrived, she could see it clearly wasn't a restaurant, and it was just a whole bunch of rooms, and it was obvious that it was a brothel. There was guys coming in out of rooms where the girls were, and this lady led her to her own room. And she was petrified as she stepped inside that room, and all there was a bed, and a really dodgy looking shower, and a pink light hanging over the bed. And she just literally collapsed on the floor and started sobbing. And she's still on her knees on the ground, just crying her little heart out, when she heard someone at the door, and the door started to open. And she just jumped up and just screamed no, and ran at the door and just barged it. And she managed to close it and lock it, and she barricaded herself in that room. And for whatever reason, she remembered me. So she called me that night in a panic of, come and get me, rescue me, get me out of this. And she's in Hong Kong, I'm in Thailand, and I say, can you drop me a GPS pin so I can find you if I need to? And she did that, and I just jumped on the internet and tried to find a flight that she could get out as fast as possible. The fastest one was the next day in the morning. So I paid for that, and she just barricaded herself in that room. She said people were trying to open that door all night. Guys just banging on it saying, let me in. But she stayed in behind that door, and then early in the morning she called me again texted me I should say, saying she can't get a taxi. She had a phone number of a taxi, but it goes to a answering machine that was in English, and she doesn't understand English. So I called the number and found it wasn't a taxi at all. She got her wires crossed. So I looked up the taxi phone number for her, and in Hong Kong they have different coloured taxis for different areas, so I had to work out from a GPS pin which taxi actually related to her. And I gave her the number, and within about an hour she sent me an SMS to say she was in a taxi on the way to the airport. And then I forget how long the flight was. When she arrived back into Thailand, she gave me a photo of her at the baggage claim. Not that she had any, because she snuck out with and left whatever she had behind. And she was able to get home to her family, to her mum and dad. And I really thank God that she thought of me, because her life could have turned out so differently if she had nobody to call out to. Just pretty much like this next story I've got. We were over in Laos actually, and two of the boys went out and they found this kid. She was 12 years old, and they just do what we always do, called her over, and we're just building trust with her and trying to get into a place where we believe that she'll trust us enough to leave with us. And they left her that first night with a plan to go back the second night, feeling that they'd done quite well on that first night, but not enough to get her out. And they went back that second night specifically to follow up that girl. And as they arrived, the mama-sans, because they asked for the girl, and the mama-sans said, she's not here. 4 guys have already paid for her for that night. And so they didn't think too much of it, and they just kept on going to other brothels looking for other kids. And the following day we got a call from the police, because we're very well connected in that area, and they told us that they'd just found a body of a 12-year-old girl in the bushes, that those 4 guys had actually raped her and killed her. They caught 2 of them, but the other 2 they couldn't get. And again, that's not a positive story, but it shows me how real this is, like how urgent this is. We can't afford to just get complacent and leave these kids any longer than necessary. I remember a little kid called Dena. She lived in a small village, and it was several hours out of the main city, very much like Cassie. And her dad, he was an alcoholic and a drug user, and he would get drunk and he would beat her mum and sometimes beat the kids, but mainly the mum. And eventually the mum had enough, and they separated, and Dena went with her mum and 3 of her younger siblings, and the mum was a peasant farmer, and she just couldn't afford to send the kids to school or barely feed them. So she spoke to Dena, and she suggested, I need you to go and find work. So Dena did the same thing as Cassie, and she spoke to her friends, what can I do for work? And they came up with the same idea. And so Dena jumped into a pickup truck that was going into town, and she was actually dropped off in exactly the same place as Cassie. She was picked up in a very similar way. A mama-san came out, and she offered her a place to sleep and some food and a job. And she said, all you need to do is sit with customers, and if they want you, you go and sleep with them. Now, Dena, she was only 15 years old. She was a virgin, and she had no concept of what sex was. When the mama-san said you might have to sleep with customers, she literally thought, sleep with customers. She told us that on that first night she was taken to the room. She was in her room, and a customer came into her room, and this guy started to undress. And she didn't know what was going on, but she knew she didn't want whatever was going on, and she screamed at him to tell him put his clothes back on and get out. And he did. He went out, but only a very short time he came back again. And he said, I've already paid the mama-san. I'm going to have sex with you. And he literally beat her until she submitted, and then he raped her. And then for the next 3 months, Dena was forced to have sex with usually 3 to 5 men every night. Normally she only got 1 meal a day. And the mama-san usually didn't give her any money that the customer were paying. And she said many times she was locked in a room and she was gang raped by men. And any time she would fight back, they would beat her, drag her by the hair and put her back on the bed and just continue to rape her. The first night we met Dena, you could see by the way she looked at us that she just assumed we were bad men. Just like every other guy that had been there, that had come there and raped her in the past. You could see the anger, you could see the fear in her eyes when she looked at you. But on the second visit, I don't know what happened, but she must have really thought about us from the day before, because when we went back the second time, it was like we were sitting with a totally different girl. Her body language was totally different, and you could see straight away that she trusted us. So we thought this is the right time, and we got out our phones again and we started flicking through photos of girls that we'd rescued, and we just told her, we can disappear tonight. And this kid beat us to our motorbikes. She was up so fast, out on the back of our bikes, and we took off back to one of the homes, and this kid went to sleep literally for 2 full days. And when she woke up, she said a statement, something along the lines of, that's the first time in a long time that I can remember that I could just go to sleep, go to bed and just sleep, which is sort of ripped my heart out, but at the same time, what a good thing. Now she can go to bed and just sleep. There were clipboards that the team was going to hand out. The purpose of the clipboards was if you were interested in getting our newsletter or wanted to keep in touch and find out as we rescue more kids, and just there's some options on there that if you ticked, we can give you different information. That would be fantastic. So if you wanted to fill it out, or not fill it out, but just pass it to the person next to you as I go through this next couple of stories. So a lot of what we do, how we rescue the kids out, is we go in there posing as customers, pulling 1 kid out at a time or 2 kids out at a time. But another thing that we do is we also work with the police. The great thing about working with the police is you see brothels shut down, you see these guys that are trafficking these children arrested, which I personally think is really cool. I remember we got a phone call from a pastor in Laos, and he called us. He's really quite panicked. He said he had just had a phone call from a girl that was from his area. About 3 or 4 months ago, she disappeared, and this kid had called him to say, I was taken from my village. They took me across the border. I'm in Thailand, but I have no idea where I am in Thailand. I'm in this building and they're making me have sex with men. I'm hurting, I'm bleeding, but they're still making me have sex. Can you find me? Can you rescue me? And this pastor had no idea what to do, and somehow he had heard about us, so he called us. So all we had was a phone number of a phone that actually wasn't hers, and we had her nickname, and he emailed us a photo of her. So we reached out to some police that we trusted and we've worked with many times, and they were able to triangulate the signal of that phone that she called from and give us a GPS pin. And then one of my boys got on the phone and just called that phone probably for about 3 hours until this kid picked it up, because different people were answering the phone. And when this kid answered the phone, he said something really simple like, the pastor in Laos called us to say that you've been trafficked and you want out, and we're going to find you. And that was about it. And then we jumped in this truck, and it was about 12 or 14 hours drive, and we just took off heading to the border there between Laos and Thailand. And the GPS pin that was dropped actually was exactly on the brothel, so it was perfect. And we went into that brothel that night and sat down, and we just looked around the brothel, and we could see this kid sitting up against the wall, and you could tell she was really scared. She was doing her best not to make eye contact with us, because obviously she didn't want to be called over. She didn't want to be raped again that night. And we eventually had to go over and take that kid's hand and bring her over and sit with us. And as she sat down, the guy who called her on the phone, he just leant over to her and he said, I'm the guy who called you. We found you and we're here to get you out. And this kid just, she just burst into tears. And that's not what you want in an environment where you're trying to stay under the radar. And so we just told this kid, can you go to the bathroom and try and get yourself together? And she did that, and she came back. And we just called the mama-san over and paid a bar fine to take her away that night. The mama-san assumed we were just going to take away an abuser, and what we were doing was we were just going to disappear. We're driving to the other side of Thailand. There's no way you're going to find us. So we just jumped in the car and we started driving off, heading back to our base. And about 20 minutes into that drive, the kid just screamed out, "Stop! You got to take me back. I can't come. I got to go back." And we said, "What?" And she said, "When I was taken from my village, 5 of my friends were also taken from my village. And if I don't go back, they're going to sell my friends and we'll never find them. Because if the brothel owners get spooked, they just move us to other brothels, and it had already happened twice since she'd been trafficked." She said, "You've got to take me back." And it's probably the hardest thing we've ever had to do is we turned that car around. And we took that kid back to the brothel on the promise that we're going to meet with the police the next day and do a raid and rescue all 6 of them. Now, we'd never worked in that area before, so we didn't know if these were the good guys or the bad guys. And we went into the police station first thing that morning, and the next morning, and we told them what had happened and said, we need to do a raid on these 2 brothels, because the 6 girls were across 2 brothels very close together. And they said, "Yep, no problem." So night time came, and we went and we raided both of those brothels. But all 6 girls were missing. The police had called them to say they're coming. So through my interpreter, I reached out to the head of police in that area. And I just said simply, if we don't have these 6 kids back in our hands within 24 hours, I'm going to go to the international press and I'm going to expose what's happened here. And that could have gone both ways. But You know, by the grace of God, he saw wisdom in what I was suggesting, and he called us in about 6 hours' time to say that he's got the 6 girls, he's left them up at the border, you can go get them yourself, like, you know, bit of saving face. So we went up and we found those 6 kids, got them across the border, got them back to their mums and dads. How cool is that? God is good. I'll just tell one more story. A little while ago, I went with my family. We went on holiday for a week, and we went to an area where we have one of our projects. And during the day, you know, I was the good dad, the good husband. We did all the fun touristy stuff, and it was awesome. But at night time, I went out on rescue with the boys. And over those 7 days, we rescued 20 kids. The oldest was 15, the youngest was 12. And I asked a bunch of them if they'd write their story out for me so I could tell you guys and other people. And Lee was one of those girls that wrote her story out. Now, Lee was 15 years old, and when her mum came to her and literally kicked her out of home, cursing her, saying, you know, go make your own money, I'm not going to look after you anymore. And Lee got into a bus and headed into the city. It was about 6 hours away. And this is what Lee wrote. I'll read it for you. I was looking for work on the first day, and I took the tuk-tuk around the city. I met one lady at the noodle shop, and I had my backpack on, and I ordered some noodles. This lady sits by me and starts asking questions. I explained to her that I was looking for a job, and she asked me what I wanted to do. And I told her I wanted to work in a restaurant with my friend. I couldn't find my friend's phone number, so the lady offers to help me find her. The lady at the noodle shop asked me where my friend is, and I explained she works at the restaurant. She asked what the name of the restaurant was, but I didn't know it. She then pretended to call my friend for me and tells me that she had made contact with her and she's waiting for me at the restaurant. At this point, I trusted her, and she took me there. But once I got there, I could see it wasn't a restaurant. It had many, many rooms, and I was very confused. I didn't know what this job was, so I asked the lady, and she said, don't worry, your friend's waiting for you inside. And then the lady says she'll prepare a special room for me. And the lady then takes me to a room and says I need to stay here, sleep here, and tomorrow I start work. At 6 p.m, the lady then says I have to have a shower and put makeup on and a short skirt. I'm confused because I just wanted to meet my friend and see how she is. I'm worried about my friend not being here. But I prepare myself as the lady says because she told me my friend is coming to pick me up. I ask what work happens at night, and the lady says not to worry because my friend's coming to pick me up soon. I wait for my friend for a long time, but she doesn't come. I see many men coming in and they ask me for sex, but I don't understand. Then a man says, I come here all the time, and that if I live here, I have to have sex with men. Then the man took me, he grabbed my hand, and he forced me to the room. I'm still confused and I cry. I try to call my friend to come and get me, but I was raped. I was a virgin, and now I cry every night and I'm very sad. Lee went on to say she was often locked into a room and she was brutally raped and beaten. And she said she would scream at the top of her lungs for anybody to come and rescue her. But she said nobody came. And the customers didn't care how loud she cried. They would just keep on going and going until they finished. She was made to take drugs. She was made to drink alcohol. She was made to pay for a room and the food. She was made to pay for her clothes, her shoes, her makeup, all that stuff that she didn't want to wear. The mama-san tried to do her best to make sure she was always in debt. Normally she had to sleep with 4 to 5 customers every single night, sometimes up to 10. And she was forced to do that 7 days a week. She was never given a day off. And most of the time, the mama-san would keep all the money, just making sure Lee was always in debt. We also asked Lee to write down what she felt when she first met our agents, and this is what Lee said. The first time I saw the man from Destiny Rescue, I was at the brothel, and the man was always looking at me, and he seemed interested in me, and I don't know why. He was always smiling at me. After I finished with the customer I was with, the man came over and talked with me, and he asked me many questions. I've never had someone be this interested in me. He was the first man to ask me about this. The man says I'm a special girl, and I was good. And I asked him, "Are you sure?" "I don't think so." I didn't trust him, but he gave me a tip without having to do anything. So I'm very confused, and they left and said, "Take care and stay safe." The second time I see the same men, 3 in total, and they called me over to sit with them after talking to the mama-san. The 3 men asked me how long I've been working here, and my answer was for 4 months. I was scared and afraid because they were talking about taking me somewhere else, and it could be worse than where I was. I wanted to go with them the first time, but because I didn't trust them, I didn't go. But on the second visit, they explained to me and they showed me photos of many girls that had already been rescued. They also talked about making jewellery and other opportunities I'd have. I was afraid and nervous that it was another brothel, but I decided to trust them. And I got on the back of their motorbike and I went to look at the Destiny Rescue home. Now I'm at Destiny Rescue and I'm very glad. All the girls are happy and smile, not like the girls in the brothel. I think that's pretty cool. You know, God's good, isn't he? You know, in addition to rescuing these kids, we've also got about 25 or more homes around the world that we place these kids into. And, you know, they're surrounded by good, godly men and women, loving on them, helping them heal, and most importantly, doing all that we can to lead them to Jesus. You know, we're passionate about seeing every single child that we rescue come to a place of true repentance and genuine relationship with God. But just going briefly back to Lee's story, you know, the part that messes with me the most is when she says each time she was taken into a room and she was raped, she would scream at the top of her lungs for anybody to come and rescue her, but nobody came. Now logically, if you take a step back, why did nobody come? Because the only people that could hear her screaming was the guy that was raping her and the guys that were standing outside the door waiting for their turn. You know, we all know the story about the Good Samaritan, yeah? Yeah? Why was the Good Samaritan the hero of the story? I believe the reason is really simple. 2 good, godly men chose to do nothing. You know, it's so easy for us to get tunnel vision. And, you know, all we think about is our church, our ministry, our jobs, our school. And just like the priest and the Levite did in the parable of the Good Samaritan. And we forget what is most important to God, and that's people, eh? You know, the stories that I've told you tonight, I know they're not easy to listen to. But you know, if I don't tell you these stories, you would never know. You'd never know about Lee, and you'd never know that there are more than likely thousands upon thousands of girls just like Lee that are probably screaming right now, but we can't hear them. Now, my goal today was never just to raise awareness, make you aware. You know, if I was totally honest, I don't care if you're aware or not. What I care about is if you're willing to do something. You know, in the last 5 weeks, we have rescued 87 children around the world. You know, in Thailand and Laos, in Philippines and India, in Dominican Republic, and I'm missing one, Cambodia. Yep. You know, rescue is just the beginning. You know, today I really need your help. We need to be able to restore those kids. And it's a real journey. And that's what our child sponsorship program is all about. I heard on the way here that many of you are passionate about the Dominican Republic, which is cool because we're there. So we are actually 1st of next month, so it's close enough, so I'll tell you now. is we're opening that home that we have there open for sponsorship. So if you want to sponsor the home we have in Dominican Republic, you can sign up for it tonight. I'm going to get in trouble from the staff because we don't have the forms yet. So all you need to do is the form that you have, just if you really want Dominican Republic, just write Dominican Republic. Tonight when I come here, I was hoping that we might be able to find 25 people that would be willing to sponsor a child tonight. So if you feel God's speaking to you tonight about helping one of these kids, that would be a great help for us. It's $35 a month. Another thing that we've been crazy blessed with an organisation called the Dalton Foundation. And what they have offered is anyone who donates money to us with no strings attached, so it's not sponsoring a home or anything like that, but just donate money to us, they will match it dollar for dollar. So if you wanted to make a gift tonight, then we can get exactly whatever you gave from the Dalton Foundation up to a total of $40,000 I think is left. So if you wanted to be part of that, would be fantastic. The one last thing, I'm sure you might have noticed it on the way in, is that great jewellery display over there. All that stuff there is made by our girls that we've rescued. So there's jewellery, and I think there might be some bags, some aprons. So if you wanted to buy something for yourself or a gift for someone else, that helps us offer these girls sustainable employment. So that would be really cool. So I just want to finish with one last statement that I say all the time, is, when you've heard stories like this, you're really left with only two choices. You can choose to do nothing, and that really is a choice. Or you can choose to do something. I really pray you choose to do something today and be that hero in this story. God bless you guys.
Let's go ahead and take a moment and pray for Tony. God, we are so grateful for this evening to come together and become more aware of what is going on in the world around us. And those were hard stories to listen to. And to remember that every story that we heard this evening was about a small child that matters dearly to you.
Yes.
And Lord, in our series this past month, we have been talking about the fact that there is no us and them. This is all an us situation, and we all need to be a part of the solution. And as Tony just shared there at the end, it's not enough to just have information. It has to be transformation. It needs to drive us to action.
Yeah.
And God, I pray that all of us that are here this evening, I pray that you would do a stirring in our hearts for what is our unique role in this partnership. What is it that you want us to do individually? What is it that you want us to do as a church family here at Waterford?
Yeah.
To rescue more of these kids. Because every one of them matters. I couldn't help but think about so many of the girls in our own church family in the age ranges that he was talking about, and thinking that we here would do absolutely anything to keep that from happening. And God, I pray that you would spread that so that that would be our attitude towards these girls who seem so far away, but your eyes are always upon them. Yeah. You are aware of every cry. You hear those cries every night, Lord. And God, I pray that you would raise up more Tonys. I pray that you would raise up more people that are in the field, that are working in the offices to end this atrocity. God, we love you so much, and we want those things that are near and dear to your heart to be those things that are near and dear to our hearts as well. And this is one of them. This is a big one. So God, as you turn us more into your image every day, allow what we heard tonight to sink deeply into our hearts, into our guts. But allow it to go beyond that. Allow it to turn into action. Allow it to turn into hope for these kids. We are so grateful for Tony, for all of the people that work with Destiny Rescue that he represents this evening. And we pray a special blessing upon them as they take on this mighty work. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks. Let's give it up one more time for Tony. If you traveled here this evening with Tony on the team and everything, would you guys raise your hands? Got some guys and ladies there. Can you guys give it up for these guys coming out for this evening? Thank you, ladies. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys being here. Hey, again, I know Tony gave us the inside scoop there on the Dominican home that's getting ready to become available for sponsorship and everything. And my heart is, and my plan is that down the line here as a church family, that's going to become a trip for us as well. We go down there every year with Kids Alive to Barbacoa, but this is the next step for us in our partnership with Destiny Rescue, is to get involved with this as well. So if you are interested in sponsoring the Dominican home as well, knowing that that is a possibility that down the line as we start partnering with them with team trips as well, that there's a chance that you'd be able to visit that home as well. It is, you were mentioning, a little bit different because it's home sponsorship that we're doing there. So you're sponsoring for $35 a month. You're sponsoring a home of kids. So be aware of that. But guys, $35 a month. You know, with all we've talked about this in this series, we are so rich. We have so much. What can you move around to free up $35 a month? Teenagers, you can do that. All right. There's no reason. There's no off the hook for anybody in here. All of us are capable of being a part of the solution here. So I know rescues are about $1,500 to do that. We've talked about that as a church family. We've been part of 13 of those. I know there's some people who could write a check for that right now to do a sponsorship and know that there's going to be another kid that's getting taken out of these horrible situations. So if God lays that on your heart, be obedient to doing that. The jewelry, ladies, how many of you probably have it on right now? Gosh, that was a scary sight. The jewelry table on Sunday, I just backed away from that thing, Tony. It was, the ladies were like, ladies get scary when you go jewelry shopping. Like, get out of my way. So, but we are very grateful for you being here this evening, Tony. We're so grateful that we got the opportunity to be the host for the county here for this Tony Talks. And we're thankful for the team. We know that you make a lot of sacrifice of hours and time to be here to support all of this. So thank you for team members there. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and free you up to go over and ask questions, to get to the tables and find out about sponsorship, about doing rescues, about getting some jewelry. Again, that goes towards the gals who are making that jewelry. It helps them to support themselves, to support their families, so that they don't ever have to get in a situation where they might have to go back to something so atrocious as sex trafficking. So go get them. There you go. That's my last few words for you. Go get them.